Okay, I think we'll get going. Welcome, everyone. And again, thank you for joining. Before I forget, Margo, who I'll introduce shortly, has asked if you get a chance, please have some paper and pen ready. It might be helpful later on. You've joined Elders Climate Action for the first part of a series. Well, we turned things around, the second part of a series on climate anxiety. My name is Mark Cook. I'm a volunteer co-chair with ECA's Education Committee. We'll hear from Shaun and Margo, who I'm going to introduce shortly. We're going to do some Q&A. We're going to have some breakout sessions and do some other things. And we plan to wrap up in an hour and a half. So just wanted to give you a sense of things. First, I'd like to introduce Shaun Trainor, who will be leading tonight's session. Shaun is a mental well-being and climate justice advocate, researcher, and activist from Mi'kmaq, who others might consider Nova Scotia. They have been active in the climate and social justice movements for over a decade. Shaun has taken the knowledge they have gained from their studies and activism and is working to raise awareness of the effects of the climate crisis on mental well-being, as well as how we can move towards regenerative cultures by creating meaningful hope through art in all of its many forms. Recently, Shaun has been leading a youth climate circle and co-designing Flourish, a youth learning journey of climate resilience and regeneration with one resilient Earth. The Climate Circle offers a space for youth around the world to come together in community to share about their emotions, insights, and experiences of the climate crisis. Flourish is a deep learning journey from climate anxiety to courage, regeneration, and resilience within a global community. Shaun is currently writing a book on mental well-being in the climate crisis and the role of art in fostering resilience and regeneration. We will add links to their work in the chat, but we'll also include them in our follow-up email. I would also like to introduce Margo Frank. Margo was part of the ECA National Leadership Team from 2015 to the end of last year. Margo is a licensed clinical social worker in a small rural community in Northern California, where she works with older adults. Her community has been impacted by drought and wildfires, and her clients' anxiety can be easily triggered during fire season. Margo is also trained in somatic resilience and regulation work and in the community resiliency model. She believes strongly in climate activism as an antidote to climate despair. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Shaun. Shaun, please take it away.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who has joined. I really appreciate, Elders Climate Action for putting this on, and for everybody for coming out today. I'm just going to share my screen, and then we can get underway. Yeah, there. I think everyone should be able to see that. Perfect. Yeah, so my name is Shaun Trainor. I am a mental well-being and climate justice activist, advocate, and researcher. And today I'm going to be talking to you about mental well-being and building resilience in the climate crisis. And so just to begin, I'd always like to ensure that we're all on the same footing and starting in that same space. So it's good to start with some definitions. So mental well-being is our perception and evaluation of our life, living what we perceive to be a meaningful life. And then resilience, it's the ability to adapt in the face of adverse conditions and recover from a crisis. Ecological grief is a term coined by researcher Dr. Ashley Consolo, and it's the sense of loss that arises from experiencing or learning about environmental destruction or climate change. Then there's eco anxiety. This is a term that many more people know and is definitely the most common. It's also known as climate anxiety, and it's a chronic fear of environmental doom. And last, we have the term solastalgia, created by a researcher and academic in Australia named Glenn Albrecht, who just feels that we don't have enough terms to really describe accurately how we're feeling. And so solastalgia is the homesickness that you have when you are still at home and your home environment is changing in ways that you find distressing. And he came up with this term due to his own feelings. Where he lived, it had been a forested area that was completely deforested to make way for an open pit coal mine. And so then having going from living by this more pristine ecosystem to an open coal pit was very distressing for him and his neighbors. So I think it's also important that we talk about that mental illness occurs when our mental health is compromised or neglected for so long that it affects our ability to function in our everyday life. Um, Often in these talks, I'll go more deep into trauma and anxiety, but I think you're going to be speaking a bit more about this at the next session on the 30th. So I'm going to jump right into what can we do to remain emotionally and mentally healthy. And so this is a big one for me, and it's something that I am constantly trying to bring to the forefront, which is working with, not against our emotions, acknowledging the emotions that we are feeling. So often we in our society are very good at acknowledging happy emotions when we're feeling joyous, when we're feeling all sorts of good emotions, but we're not so good in our society at acknowledging and expressing emotions that are not considered okay in our society. Sorrow, grief, all of these sorts of emotions, anxiety, because we live in a society in which, especially in North America, we're always to be happy, we're always supposed to be fine, okay, good. That's the common answer when anybody asks anyone about how they are feeling. And that's not really acknowledging the emotions that we're experiencing. It's sort of masking how we're often really feeling. And I think it's very important that we acknowledge this, that we acknowledge that there are these other emotions we're feeling, and especially in relation to climate change, there are these emotions that we are feeling that are not always going to make us happy, that are not always going to be comfortable to talk about. But it is important that we do speak up about them, that we do express them and normalize not feeling okay, normalize being able to talk about these emotions and being able to talk about our anxieties and our grief, our soul nostalgia that we're experiencing in the moment, that we're experiencing when we think about our kids or grandkids' future, our own futures, as well as that of the future of the planet overall and of other species. It's really important that we do take this time to acknowledge it. And then it's important that we don't do more to feel less. So what I mean by this is that many of us, myself included, I did this in the past, and I'm really working not to do it anymore, is that we'll take on many additional tasks, many things. We'll get involved in so many activities and organizing and groups so that we don't really have to acknowledge those emotions and we don't need to feel those emotions. We sort of try to drown them out by keeping ourselves busy and keeping our loved ones busy so that they're not thinking about it as well. Instead, we should really be doing more. If we're going to do more, it should be to feel more, but we should really take that time to acknowledge that. Why am I doing all these things? Is it because I feel I have the capacity to do all of this, or am I trying to avoid emotions that are a bit uncomfortable. For myself in the past, I did do this. During my undergrad, I was studying. I worked two part-time jobs and was on the student union council and on active in three other associations, plus active in the Fridays for Future movement. And I was doing all these things because I felt they needed to be done, but I was also really trying to avoid dealing with my own grief at everything that was going on around climate change. And since then, I have really changed that, and I'm taking more and more time for myself to acknowledge how I am feeling, how I'm doing, and to really work with those. And it's constantly a struggle, but it's something that's really important. And then seeking out support. We should constantly be seeking out support. Again, in our society, and especially in North America, we do live in a society that tells us that we need to be a fully functioning individual, someone that can take care of themselves and doesn't need anyone else. And that if we do need support in some sort of way, it's sort of seen as a failure. Yet overall, humans are a communal species, and we, up until this very brief period of time that we're living in, have relied on communities for everything that now we're supposed to do as individuals. And then we wonder why we're so anxious and we're so overwhelmed. Well, we're doing the work of a community, but as one person, or attempting to do that work. And so it's really important that we do seek support. Family and friends is a good place to start. They often care deeply for us, are there for us, and will always be there for us. It can depend on family and friends, but it is a good place to start. It could also be a difficult place to start. So there are many other options. And this list, by the way, is not comprehensive. There are many others that maybe you can even tell me about, but climate circles is another one. I lead one every Wednesday, as was mentioned, which is a youth climate circle. And it's a space for youth to come together, to talk about their emotions, and to connect with one another and build that community. But there's also the organization I'm with, One Resilient Earth, hosts a climate circle every Tuesday as well at 2 p.m. Eastern. And that circle is for all generations. It's an intergenerational climate circle, and it's just a really important space for people to come together. Climate cafes are similar, similar idea, slightly different way that they go about them, but similar concept of people coming together, discussing their emotions or a certain topic. And you can also host these yourself, or you can invite me to host it or invite other people at One Resilient Earth. Personally, I'm always more than happy to come and do these circles, to host these circles. People just need to reach out to me. And then there's the Good Grief Network and all you can save circles and grief circles. Again, similar idea, just sort of different approaches to it, different focuses. And then a resource that I highly recommend would be Gen Dread. And Gen Dread is a website, social media account, slash newsletter, and now a book. The book is called Generation Dread, Finding Purpose in the Climate Crisis. And this book was written by Britt Ray, and Britt Ray is Dr. Britt Ray is one of the leading voices and researchers when it comes to mental well-being in the climate crisis. And they put forward all these resources within Gen Dread and through their monthly newsletter. So I would highly recommend looking into this. There will be links to this that go out in the email after this. And then psychologists, it's very important to go to therapy, to reach out to psychologists, to talk to somebody. But it is also very important that you make sure that they're climate aware psychologists. And that's why I have climate here in brackets. It's very important that they're climate aware, because psychologists, like all of us, are human, And many are also in denial or overwhelmed or unable to address, to really comprehend this. And some even do deny the climate crisis. And so it's very important that you find one that's climate aware and will take your mental health and well-being seriously. And then you can also take a mental health first aid course, a great resource as well, but also just explore tools and approaches that work for you specifically, because we're all living a different experience in this life. We all have had different lives that have had different traumas. And so it's very important that you take a trauma informed approach to the support and the tools and approaches that you seek out. And so avoiding and recovering from climate trauma, again, is very important that we not just acknowledge and work with our emotions, but that we then work to avoid uh, further trauma and recover from the trauma that we have experienced. And again, this is not the be all and end all of lists. There will be a couple more lists in this presentation, and it's the same for all of them. It's just a starting point. But it's really important that we set up holistic, lifelong care plans for ourselves, and that we support those around us, our kids, our grandchildren, our friends, our extended family, in setting up their own holistic and lifelong care plans. Again, we are a communal species, so it's really important that we do this together. Breathing is a simple one. It's one that's very important to me. It's an active part of my meditation practice, which is another example that I have on here. People meditate in different ways, but for me, breathing is a big focus, just taking that time to really be present with just my breath, focusing on the breathing in and the breathing out. I find that this can be a very calming, centering practice. Food and beverages. This may seem like an odd one, but humans may have many differences, but the one thing we all have in common is food. Our love for food and the ability to connect over food, to bring people together for potlucks and community dinners, or family just over the table, to bring everyone together for a delicious meal and beverages of different sorts. It's a great place to find commonality, to find comfort, and to be able to discuss topics of all ranges, and with people that we may not usually be able to sit down and talk with. But when we're sitting down and sharing food, we're able to have those conversations that may not otherwise be happening. And so I think it's a very easy, important way that we can avoid and recover from trauma, while also continuing to connect with the people in our lives. Sleep and exercise is another really important one. Again, may seem odd, but if we're not having a good sleep, not having a good routine that we're keeping in with our sleep and exercise, we can become very disoriented. We can become much more at risk for reoccurring trauma. But when we can have that sleep and exercise that really helps to regulate us, regulate our emotions, regulate our endorphins, it's a very important and easy step to take. It just takes some discipline on our parts to keep having a good sleep routine and a good exercise routine, to keep ourselves moving. And that will not just benefit our mental health, but also our physical health and the environment overall. And disconnecting in time and nature is another really important one. We are very disconnected from the natural world these days, living in our concrete jungles that are not very green. It is really important that we take time to get off our phones, computers, radios, TVs, whatever it might be, and to get ourselves outside into nature, whether that be in your own garden, in a park, out in a forest, whatever is accessible to you. That's all that matters. And just taking that time to go out and be in nature, and to really listen to nature, and to take care of nature through growing food, through planting trees, through being disconnected, through building that and reconnecting with nature in a more holistic way. Um, I mean, as you can see here in the picture, taking the time to grow food, to grow other species of plants is something that can really help nature and also help ourselves through that connection that we feel, and also just having the dirt on our hands and having the 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 plants in our hands and be there with us is really important. And this next one is often shocking to people or not something many people maybe want to do, and it is one that I would always say take caution with, which is cold exposure, because I mean, you don't want to give yourself hypothermia, but you can do cold exposure in your own home with a cold shower. Keep it short. That's all you need, just a few seconds, a minute, whatever, but don't go for very long. But cold exposure can really shock our body and bring it back to an equilibrium through polar bear swims or a cold shower, whatever it might be. It can be a fun experience. It can be, yeah, a shocking experience, but it's one that you want to be careful with. Meditation and mindfulness, I mentioned briefly. Compassion and nonviolence. This one may seem odd as well, but it is really important that we are compassionate and nonviolent with ourselves and with those around us who are also trying to avoid and recover from trauma. It's important that we are not hard on ourselves for failing at times, or on others for not seemingly doing as much as they can or could be doing. And the same with ourselves, understanding that we are at this place in time and that we have this capability, and somebody else may be at a different place in their life and only have this capability, but that everybody is trying to and supporting everyone to try to do the best that they can in a very compassionate and nonviolent way, a way that we don't and get angry at others or ourselves, but try to really understand that we're all in this together, but that we're all coming at it from different lived experiences, different traumas, and different means. We're not all able to do the same things. No one is able to do everything. We are human after all, but it's important that we compassionately do the best that we can do. And then journaling and art and creativity. Journaling can be a great source for really engaging with your emotions again, getting it all out there and seeing, why am I feeling this way? Why? And trying to understand it through the language that you use to describe that emotions in your journal, without maybe taking that next step to talk to somebody. That might come later, and journaling can be a great first step. And for me, journaling is not so much the way I go, it's more art in its many forms. For me personally, it's through painting, drawing, and dance. Those are the forms that I really enjoy. And it's what I use to get out my emotions and get them onto paper or a canvas or and yeah, in many other different ways, and to see how I'm experiencing those emotions and what they're making me think and create and how I'm feeling about that, and creating these different ideas and reimagining these different futures is how I work with my trauma, my mental well-being, especially with my grief around the climate crisis. And then community care and decolonizing self-care. As I've mentioned, we are a communal species, and so community care is really important, that we just build these communities and take care of one another. And when I say decolonizing self-care, it's really important that we all understand that we live, especially in North America, in colonized lands, but that we also live in a colonized mindset. We live in a mindset in which the natural world is there for us to use. It's not there as a part of us. We see ourselves as separate, as a dominating superior being that is just here to be able to use the natural world. And we really need to get rid of that mindset and see ourselves as part of it, and that we're here to take care of it, and it is here to take care of us. And it's an equal balance, and we need to stop seeing ourselves as superior to the natural world. And then, yeah, so navigating emotions and cultivating joy despite it all. Despite everything that is going on, it is important that we cultivate joy in our lives and in the lives of those around us so that we can work together, that we can find communities of purpose that really engage us and help us to engage with addressing our emotions, our traumas, and the climate crisis, and feel and remember the interconnectedness of it all. We are one with this world and we are a part of this world. So it's really important that we remember that, and that if we take care of it, it will take care of us. And so now I would love to do a little bit of an exercise with you. Usually I would love to have a longer time to do this, but we'll take a few minutes out. And so I would like all of you to imagine that it is the year 2070. Yes, some of us won't be around then. That doesn't matter. Imagine that you are still around then, that you're the age you are now, or that you're younger. It's entirely up to you. But the year is 2070. I just want you to think, what does a typical day look like realistically for you in the year 2070? And I'll give probably 2 minutes to think about this. And then if you just want to write your thoughts in the chat, we can get some of those in there and see what people are saying. And then we can move on to the next bit. All right. Thank you to everyone who has shared. I think it's very important that we do take that time to think. And I'm going to now rephrase the question a little bit and give you another 2 minutes to think about it, and then add your thoughts to the chat again. So again, the year is 2070. But instead of what does a typical day look like for you realistically, what does the typical day look like for you in your hopes and dreams? What do you want a day in 2070 to look like for you? Not what you think it might look like, but what you want it to look like. Yeah, again, thank you to everyone who has shared. I mean, I hope that you're all looking through the chat to see what people are sharing. I think it's really important. And it's no problem. I mean, if people shared their more hopeful ones before, I mean, the first time I ever did this, that's also what I did. But I'm also quite hopeful. But I think it's really important that and I do this exercise to get people to think of what they think is going to be the future and what they actually want the future to be. And it's often quite different. And I think it's really important that we do think about that, and that we take those thoughts and we try to reimagine the world. This is where I see that art is so important, because art can enable us to break out of the boxes that we have been put into in our society. We're often told that we should think within this the system that we are currently working within, and that we are not going to be able to address the climate issue, that it's already too late, that even if we do, there's going to be all of these, it's not going to be a very hopeful future. Which, yes, of course, even if we begin to address it now, there will be still climate change that will happen that we can't avoid. But at the same time, we can still create a much better future, a much more hopeful future, and one that is actually these things that have been put in the chat that we want to see, that we can live in that much more hopeful way, and we can make that a reality. But it really does take reimagining and thinking beyond just the climate science. Climate science is so immensely important, but we do need to think beyond it. It only is one piece of the puzzle. It's only one piece, and it's telling us what's wrong, and we need to use art and our emotions to create the future and to solve those problems that the climate science has told us, and to make a more just and regenerative world. And so that's why I'm telling you this, and that's why I'm talking about art. I think it's really important that we explore art in its different forms and unleash our imaginative powers, and that we support our family, our friends, our kids, our grandchildren, and just create the space for them to explore. I mean, children and youth, I mean, especially little children, what they're able to create and what they come up with is always very interesting. I have two nephews and a niece, and I mean, they're 8, 6, and 2. The things that their minds can come up with is always astounding. And I think that we just need to enable ourselves to unleash that bit of our brains that they have still are using every day. And through that, we can actually make a much more just and regenerative world. And so find a community of inspiration for yourself. As I've said before, this is not an exhaustive list, but here are a few communities that I find quite interesting and inspiring, especially the first two. So Solar Punk is sort of an artistic community that reimagines what the world could look like through in a way that the world is run by renewables, but also different justice issues have been addressed as well. And it uses the form of books and comic books and movies and that sort of media to really create images of this new future in which we're living without fossil fuels, in which we're living a much more just society. Afrofuturism is very much in line with solar punk. But the way I sort of describe it is that Afrofuturism is really bringing forward in our minds that the climate movement and the movement to save humanity it's not white, it's not solely white as we're often told in media, as we're often seen in Hollywood. It is people of color that are a part of this. We're all a part of this. We're all humanity is a part of this. And so Afrofuturism is really bringing that to the forefront and seeing, yeah, these communities of color really building out a much more hopeful, much more just and creative future. It also uses comic books and movies and things like that to really drive home this message. It's another very artistic community that I find a lot of inspiration from. Material ecology is an interesting intersection of um, the natural world and engineering, and it's taking the principles of the natural world and trying to put them in engineering, and not just the principles but also building materials and looking at how nature constructs itself and how we can mirror that in our own architecture to be much more fluid between the natural world and our human world instead of the concrete worlds that we currently live in. In a more than human politics is seeing that interconnectedness. It's seeing that when we go about making our political decisions, we shouldn't be just seeing it as ourselves, as humanity, as this superior species. We should be seeing it as the decisions that we make have ramifications for the natural world and other species. And so when we go about our politics, we should be including a thought to and working with the natural world to make our politics much more entwined and interconnected. And then it's important to remember that we live in this, that the world we live in is constantly changing, and we can create a better world. And as Bayo Akomolafe has said, perhaps today's new openings in thought and action can afford us an opportunity to build sanctuaries, places where people can feel safe and held, where a composting of ourselves can take place. And so building off of that, building off of this reimagining, which is all just a beginning, we do need to take action. Engage in ways that feel regenerative and aligned with what matters to you, because there are so many things that we can do, so many causes, but we, again, as a communal species, we need to find those little communities that are taking on what is aligned with us. There are many things that I am passionate about, but it is mental health and well-being that I am focused on, that I am engaging with, because it is what is most aligned with what matters to me. And I think it's a very important area. And for somebody else, that's going to be something different. But find what works for you. Find the different ways of doing that work as well. It could be through art. As I've tried to say here, art is a really important one to me because I think we do need to reimagine this future and to use this reimagining to engage with our emotions. Why do we think the future is going to be this way? Why are we grieving? And these sorts of things. It could be through communication. It is very important that we speak about our emotions, that we speak with one another, and that we really engage with these complex issues in a much more meaningful and communicative way instead of just keeping it to ourselves. We need to have these difficult conversations. Regenerative agriculture is a great way. We continually need to feed ourselves, but we need to do it in a much more regenerative way that is in tune with the natural world. And reforestation, it is one we hear about a lot, often talked about as the saving grace. It is not. There is no silver bullet. There's not one solution. But that's not to say that reforestation isn't important. We do need to rewild this world, and as much of it as we possibly can, and then to live in harmony with it. And care work, it's an important one that I have put on here because we often don't think of care work as a part of climate activism, as supporting one another, but it is. By taking care of the elderly, by taking care of our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our family, all of these different care work that we do in our day-to-day life is a part of climate activism. It's a part of supporting one another. And as long as we keep doing this, it's really how we'll move forward, is we take care of one another. Dreaming together, dream big, share those dreams, dream with one another, and organize around a cause that matters to you, that is important to you. Engage with nature and community. It can help both with mental well-being and the restoration of ecosystems. And finally, intergenerational support. It is really important that we do come at this together, at the climate crisis, as well as all of the mental ill health that comes with it. We need to support one another throughout the generations. And we need, a great way to do that is by creating space for community to grow and flourish. Create that space for yourselves, your kids, your grandkids to all come together, to share experiences across those generations. We all have different lived experiences and different knowledge bases. There is so much that we can learn from our kids, our grandkids, our grandparents, our parents. There's so many different lived experiences in there and so much knowledge in that, in all of those generations. And it's so important that we create and share together. And another great way, especially for people that are older, to support intergenerationally is to support youth in their reimagining of the future. It is the future that they will be living. And so it's really important that those who are older can support youth in that reimagining, create the space for them to have the time, the energy, and feel safe in reimagining a different future, a different world. And that I think is one of the most important things. And it also create that space for them to talk about their emotions, host a climate circle, host a climate cafe, bring someone in, bring myself in to speak on these things and to really just create a safe space for people to engage with their emotions and well-being. And that's one of the best ways that we can begin to really acknowledge and move forward in a more meaningful way that does not see us becoming overwhelmed by everything that is happening. And ultimately, don't let generational differences hold you back. We may have many different ideas, many different ways of doing things, many different places that we are coming from across generation, but we are continually creating and recreating this world that we live in. And that's a part of the beauty of life. And so even if we might not agree across generations on everything, we should not let that hold us back. We should see that there is so much to offer across generations, and that together we can reimagine a future that is much more just and regenerative, and one that our mental health and well-being is at the forefront, as even though it has not been to date. We can create a world where it is. And so I want to thank you. I'm a little bit over my time, so I want to thank everybody for taking the time, for listening to me, for being here today, and for engaging with your emotions, for doing that exercise and really thinking about what you think the world will be like in 2070 and what it could be, because we can create a much better world together. So yeah, thank you. If you ever have any questions or want to reach out to me for any sort of reason, this is my email. You are more than welcome to contact me. I'm more than happy to share resources, and I will be sharing some more that will go in the email with this recording later on, I believe. But yeah, that is my presentation, and I will hand things back over. But yeah, for a bit of Q&A, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you, Shaun, for a couple things for this presentation. Number one, number two, for several times offering to reconnect with us if there's any desire to do that. So that was terrific. And again, you'll be getting emails and things. So if you didn't get Shaun's email address, that will be available as soon as tomorrow. There were not a lot of questions. I did see one, but I think what we could do, and I'll get to that one, but I think the other thing we could do is, if there's anything you wanted to, Shaun, maybe to touch on more about anything he presented, you could put that in the chat. And if we limit it just to things you would like maybe Shaun to touch on a bit more, then we won't get overwhelmed with comments. But one of the questions, if I can find it, my chat is scrolling, and again, I could not see the questions. Alan asked, is care work different from mutual aid? Or he said, care work different from mutual aid? Yes. So Shaun, I don't know if that's something you can touch on, or if you needed to get more information on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think mutual aid can be seen as a part of care work. I think care work is a quite broad definition that I use there. It is really that act of seeing that we're all connected and that we are a community, and really going out and supporting one another. And mutual aid, that is at the core of it. So I would say that it is an aspect of care work. Maybe one that I should have mentioned in it. I was thinking more of other aspects, but it is definitely a part. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for that question.
Ariana, are you able to maybe read off some of those questions? I know you said it's in a planning doc, but I'm afraid in navigating, I'm going to goof things up.
I know there was one that is coming up. Is there a role for dream analysis and self-care?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Is there a role for dream analysis and self-care? I don't know if that's something that you focus on or not, but if so.
Yeah, I've not actually focused on dream analysis yet. But I think there's definitely a role for it in self-care. It is something I can't say too much about, but I think especially if you feel that it would work well for you, you should definitely tap into that and explore that avenue. It is something I personally want to learn more about, especially when people, talk to me about their dreams. I'm always fascinated. And then I'm also just fascinated by my own dreams. And so dream analysis is something I want to explore more. And I think that if you feel it's right for self-care for you, then you should definitely go for it. Yeah.
Another one that I see coming up quite a few times is care for grandchildren, and how we can help like our teenage grandchildren, or maybe nephews, nieces, etc., cope with climate despair. I don't know if you had any thoughts on maybe supporting our family and community members.
Yeah, well, I think some of the things that I've mentioned today is really important, really creating that sort of community space, which you likely already have with your own family. Um, there are many resources, which a few that I will share later on with that email that are specifically directed at that have been curated and created for talking to youth and children, grandchildren specifically about them. I know because I've given them to my mom so that she can talk to my nieces and nephews when that sort of arises. Um, but I think, as I've mentioned, art in its many forms, storytelling is a very good one. You don't need to specifically address it as the climate crisis, but you can talk about it in different ways throughout storytelling. And then yeah, I think it is for many, depending on the age, that some children are ready for a more frank discussion. And another resource that I'll be sharing is called Eco Anxious Stories. They recently just put out a resource specifically for uh, younger children. Um, that is about how we can talk with them. And I believe it may even be a sort of like work booklet. So it's not just a resource for you, but also a resource that you can use with them specifically and that they can go through themselves. So I'm going to share that as well because I don't have the link right off the top.
Yeah, and if we can also, so everybody, we will be sending a follow-up email after this. So if we have all these links, no worries, we're going to compile them all into all one email. So you have all these resources in one. And then kind of along those same lines, Shaun, can you recommend any other speakers and or topics that might, kind of as a jumping off point to become more climate psychology aware? And like more aware of climate anxiety and how to find support. I know you gave a lot of resources in your presentation and we can drop those sources, but if you have any names off the top of your head too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh. I have so many other ones that are not right off the top of my head. But as I mentioned during my talk, Britt Ray is somebody that I always recommend to people. With her recent work with Generation Dread, her work is all as well. It's about finding purpose, finding meaning, and in her book, she does talk a lot about the decisions around to have children and what's that has meant for her and how she's coped with that. So Britt Ray is one that I would always recommend to people. Another is Ashley Consolo. I can put these names in the chat so that people have them. Oh, that's supposed to be doctor, but that's whatever. And Dr. Ashley Consolo, these are two sort of leading people on this. They approach it in very different ways, but they are very interesting, and I think they both speak very well on it. They've both written books about it. They've both done talks about it, radio, TED Talks, all sorts of things. So they're both very good resources that can be accessed in many different ways. Yeah, that's another one that has just been added in there. Yeah, there will be many more that are not coming to me right now because that's how my mind works. If you ask me for names, I will forget every name that I've ever heard, except those because I can literally see their books over there. So yeah.
No, that's definitely helpful. And we, like I said, we'll compile all those resources in our follow-up email. So I appreciate the few names you had off the top of your head. Another question I have from Karen is, do we need a new ethic of how humans relate to the whole environment? So she followed that up with that. We are connected not just as humans, but as all life and land. And then she references Robin Wall Kimmerer. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, and I apologize if I didn't. And braiding sweetgrass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Braiding Sweetgrass is definitely a book I would recommend to people. And the thoughts that are in there that that idea of a new ethic of how humans do relate to the whole environment. I say yes. I don't know if it's necessarily a new ethic, more as going back to something we understood before and we are rediscovering and understanding again. It is something, so I perhaps new to us currently. It is something that we do need. We need to begin to understand again that we are not here to dominate this world, that everything isn't here for us. We're just a part of it all. We're all interconnected. And ultimately, we rely more on the natural world than it relies on us. So I think that's an understanding we need to bring forward, is that we can't survive without it. It can survive without us. So.
For sure. We have a question from Melanie on wondering how spirituality or faith can play a healing role and help us reimagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for some, faith will be the way forward. I know that during some of my very activist times was with a lot of faith groups, especially from what are they called? Friends. I can't think of what they're actually called. Their greater term is. It's a religious group of Buddhists and other different religious groups have all often come together in interfaith meetings and interfaith Quakers. Thank you. I think that for some, faith is definitely a way to find solace and to help heal. It isn't for everyone, but I think for some it can be the right way, and that it can help us reimagine the world, because through the stories that it tells, we can often see the ways in which humans maybe can be better connected with community. And I think that faith often offers a centering community for many people that we do not have maybe now as much. There are other things that we can center our communities around, but I think that faith does bring a lot of people together in a way. So I think it can help. Again, not for everyone, but it is for some. And that's what I mentioned in like my talk, is it is really important that you find what works for you, because everything I've mentioned, it's not going to work for everyone, and it is really important that you find what works for you, because we have all had different life experiences. So I know what works really well for me, and I can give ideas of things that I know can work for people, but ultimately people will have the right things for themselves. And try all sorts of different things. Don't just be like, this one thing works, I won't try anything else. Just try lots of things. You might be surprised.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll move into our activity. So don't go away just yet. I'm gonna head to Marcia's question. She says that she feels angry a lot of the time with climate change, and was wondering if the suggested kind of activities and treatments, etc., that you had offered would be good for anger, or if there's anything specific that might be good to address the anger we might feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anger is a tough one. I think that many of us can feel it, especially because we live in a society in which a handful of corporations are the ones ultimately doing the most damage. Yes, we do need to consume less, and I think that's a really important part. And there's so much that we can do and should do, and working with our emotions is a big part of that. Resources specifically for anger, again, I can share some. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think the first step is definitely acknowledging that you're feeling that, and acknowledging that, and then coming to a climate circle or a climate cafe, I think, is a really important one as well. I've had numerous people come, and that's what their anger is, what they're experiencing, and they have found that being able to talk about that with other people experiencing similar emotions has been a really important resource for them and really helped them. And climate circles often end up, in my experience, with people sharing all sorts of additional ideas and resources and stuff that people can then take that I don't have, but that they have in their own lives and through their own experience. And so it's also just a great way to find more resources through climate circles. And then, as I've sort of mentioned, I personally find that art is a great way of channeling, and perhaps not treating, but working with my emotions, especially anger, overwhelm, grief, anxiety, because I can channel that into the art that I'm creating, and really see it becoming something, and see, why is it that? Why am I feeling that way? And why am I creating this specific thing? What has brought me to that point? Um, and I did mention, and I believe it was mentioned in the chat as well, therapists, climate aware therapists, though. Always try to make sure that they're climate aware, because, and if you read Britt Ray's work, you'll see that she mentions it all the time. She's like, climate aware, climate aware, climate aware, because not everybody is. And so if they're not, they might not take you seriously, unfortunately. We're not to that point. I did do a master's in psychology, and we didn't talk about climate change once. So, except when I would be the one to bring it up all the time, until I wrote my actual thesis paper, and my supervisor and I were solely focused on that. And now her and I together created a course at that university, which is psychology in the climate crisis. So now students can take that course and can learn about it, because if you're going to become a psychologist or therapist, anything, you should be learning about climate change and its effects on mental health, because they're there. So in the future, hopefully the majority will be climate aware therapists. For now, you have to do a little bit of searching, unfortunately.
Well,
Okay,
thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I think we're ready to move to Margo, and she has a grounding exercise. And then for those of you still on, we're going to do some breakout rooms. So you're up, Margo. Thanks again.
And a huge thank you to Shaun. Everybody, give him a virtual round of applause, or them a virtual round of applause.
Thank you so much, Shaun. I just want to mention as a afterthought to the questions and your lovely answers, is that taking action is a great way to challenge your anger, and to do it in a way, to choose to take actions that you feel are the way that you can be most effective. And that for each of us, each of you, it's going to be different. But to focus on channel your anger that way is a great way to manage it and to shift it. And I'm going to also share some other resources with Ariana that can go out in the email for ways that you can learn simple little things that can help you to bring your nervous system back into a state of regulation, whether it's from anger or anxiety, whatever it is. And these are things that anyone can learn to do, and for anything, not only climate anxiety. But thank you for letting me be here with you today. I'm going to guide you all in a little short, very short guided visualization meditation. Then you'll go into breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, you're going to have an opportunity to somehow on paper express or draw. You can use words, but you might want to just use color or draw something or make marks. You're not going to need to show whatever you put on that paper to anyone else. So don't worry about if you're not an artist. That's not going to matter. What the purpose of that exercise is to help you call in an animal, a plant, a person, a place that gives you a sense of comfort or ease, support or inspiration or guidance. and to draw on that and see what the gift comes to you from whatever that plant, animal, person, place, whatever that is. And this is something that you can do with your grandkids, whatever age they are. And the more that we have something to draw on when we're in those difficult moments, the easier it is for us to get through them. So you'll go into the breakout rooms after the guided visualization. You'll have probably about 8 to 10 minutes, something like that, to express yourself on paper. And then you can share, if you want to, with the other people in your breakout room. Not if you want to show what you've done on the paper, you're welcome to hold it up. But that's absolutely, I kind of discourage that, because it can create a lot of anxiety of, oh, that person's a good artist and I'm not going to, I don't even want anyone to know what I did. So I encourage you not to share the actual visual of it, but to share what the process was like for you. You might say, this was really hard. I just was so challenged, like whatever your process was and what you gained from it. So what was the guidance or support or sense of ease that this animal or place, whatever you chose, offered you? So I'm going to suggest, to begin with, you not get started yet on doing that exercise. Put those things aside. And if you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes, or you can keep them open, whatever's most comfortable for you. And begin by just noticing where your feet are touching the floor or whatever their surface they're on, where your body's making contact with what you're sitting on, what your back's against, your legs, your bottom. Just notice some of those points of contact. And you might even have a sense that there's some roots that are growing down from your feet, going down through the floor or floors of the building you're in, down into the earth, deep, deep into the earth, anchoring you here in this place, the place where you are. And as you do that, just open your awareness, and you might recall a person, a place, an animal, a plant, that when you recall it, gives you some sense of ease, comfort, support, guidance. And as that comes to you, it can just be the first thing that came to you. No need to really think this through in any cognitive way. Just let it kind of inhabit you, and notice if it settles somewhere in particular in your body, or it's alive somewhere in your body, maybe all over your body, or maybe in a particular place. And then just stay with that place, that sense in your body for a few breaths, and let yourself really marinate in it. That sense of ease or support, accompaniment that is offered to you. And then when you're ready, you can begin again to just notice where you're sitting and the room that you're in, and that you're part of this greater Zoom room as well. And then you will get a notice to send you to your breakout groups. And you'll also get a little notice reminding you that you might want to stop what you're expressing on paper and share a little with your group before we come back to the larger group, where again, you'll be invited to share anything you want to share briefly in the chat. So enjoy your time. Okay, welcome back. And I want to invite you, if you'd like to share something. I know those breakout rooms ended up being a little shorter than we had hoped. but we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for those questions with Shaun beforehand. So if you want to share something in the chat about what the process was like for you, or what was it that came to you and what it gave you that is helpful for you, put that in the chat, and I'll be keeping my eye on what's popping up. And yeah, while people are doing that, I'll just share briefly what Jen and I were sharing, what we came up with. And what came to me was maybe 400-year-old valley oak in a little grassy park a couple blocks from where I live. And that tree has been there through incredible changes in the community, from when it was just a deep valley, deep wide valley of the Pomo people, to being part of a little grassy city park now. And it's been resilient through all of that. So that gives me hope of resilience also. Mark says they talked about owls. Oh, and someone remembered a beautiful childhood memory of summertime when she was young. When someone said her cats. Cats, our pets, animals can really be a source of comfort for us. Walking over fields and woods every morning, Alan says. Oh, partying with grandchildren. Oh, remembering your own childhood of being in your grandfather's backyard with lilac bushes along a fence, and how beautiful that was. Sitting on a sandbar in the Bahamas, Debbie says. I love how there's such great variety, and that, you know, when we turn our attention to something away from the climate doom and gloom place that our brains want to drift to, and towards what gives us hope, comfort, connection, we feel much better, I'm imagining. I'm wondering if somebody wants to share a little more about how doing this exercise might have been helpful for you. And if so, just shoot me a little text saying you want to do that, and I'll call on you. Jeff's saying that he would love to be an eagle flying 50 miles above the earth. Well, I'm just going to share a couple of other resources also. So in my bio that Mark read, it mentioned the community resiliency model. This is something developed by the Trauma Resource Institute. They're based in Los Angeles. They've done trainings all over the world with all kinds of communities. They came to my small town, and many people here my county were trained in helping one another. You don't have to be a therapist. You don't even have to be literate to learn how to do this. And it's simple things that can help you to just bring your nervous system into enough of a state of regulation that you can use your thinking mind and not be caught in your emotional state. It can be something as simple as drinking some water, or leaning against a wall, or noticing the colors or shapes, basically using your senses to bring you into the present moment. And because our brains get hijacked, our emotional brains get hijacked all the time by things. So I want to really recommend that. You can look them up online. The Community Resiliency Model from the Trauma Resource Institute.org, and get them to come to your community and train people. And they also have a free app called iChill, small I, capital CHILL, that talks you through basically all the tools that are part of that model. And it's a great tool to use and practice with. And it's got a little help now section that are it's kind of your emergency first aid when you need a little emergency emotional first aid. So I just wanted to offer those also. And it's been, I'm just delighted by how many people were here today and got to hear from Shaun about all that he's doing and all of his ideas. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jen or Ariana, whoever's taking, or Mark, whoever's taking over.
Hi, it's me. Again, thank you for being part of this. I really also want to acknowledge Margo and Shaun for leading today's workshop. I also want to make you aware of a couple of things coming up. You may know that we had to cancel last Monday's event that is rescheduled for November 30th. We hope you can join us. And the other thing we have, the last thing actually before the end of the year, is December 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, where Chef Christopher Galarza will teach us about the personal and climate benefits of induction cooking. Additionally, on January 5th in the new year, we'll be offering an event in conversation with authors Madeline Ostrander and Bill McKibben of 350.org and Third Act. Check our follow-up emails to go to the Elders Climate Action website to register for those events. Lastly, if you like this program, this is the part I'm not crazy about, but I feel compelled to do, and that is to ask for consider a donation if you're able. Your donations enable ECA to provide programming like this. And on that note, November 29th is Giving Tuesday, and we'll be calling on you to join in that Global Day of Giving by supporting Elders Climate Action if you hadn't already before then. So again, we really appreciate your time. We wanted to be sure we finished on time. And so I think that that will wrap up for today, and we'll hope to see you next time on November 30th. Thank you all.